My name is Caleb, and I turned 27 last night. In my family, birthdays don't arrive with fanfare, they shuffle in like errands. When Ivy, my younger sister, marks a milestone, there are playlists, balloons a slideshow, stitched from her best angles. When Lucas, my older brother, lands a promotion, there are toasts and boxes that rattle like promise. When it's me, there's usually a quiet dinner and a pair of socks that fit well enough. We met at the old colonial where we grew up, the living room still wearing the same beige glare it's had since middle school. A strip of sagging streamers tried to pretend it was a party. A supermarket cake sat on the coffee table, the barcode sticker clinging to the lid like it didn't get the memo. Mom rose, floated from plate to plate, narrating the menu as if a tour would make it special. Dad, Edward, took his familiar seat at the end of the room, posture crisp eyes doing math only he understood. Ivy curled into the couch, thumbs a blur, chasing likes in real time. Lucas held court about a work anecdote, the kind that ends with him looking competent and everyone else learning something. I took the chair near the lamp, the one with the wobble you have to sit around. Gift time arrived the way weather changes gradually, then all at once. Ivy handed over a box wrapped in shiny paper. Inside was a white mug stamped with above average brother. She grinned like she'd nailed a joke. Lucas offered a paperback from his shelf, the spine-softened pages, annotated by someone who wasn't me. Classic, he said, as if that made it personal. I arranged my face into gratitude. It felt like putting on a borrowed jacket. Then Edward reached into his blazer and passed me an envelope. For a second, something small lifted inside my chest. Maybe he'd decided to see me, to meet me where I am, instead of where he thinks I should be. I opened it. A blank card slid into my palm, no message, no signature, just a neat fold down the center. Silence pooled. Then Dad leaned back and said at a volume designed to carry, "If you can't keep your own lights on, you don't qualify for presents." It wasn't a shout. It didn't need to be. The words were precise and dressed like wisdom. Ivy laughed first, quick and bright. Lucas followed with a tight smile. Mom let out a nervous little chuckle and called it tough love, the way you might label a bruise character. My face went hot and then cold. I set the card on the table as if it might stain. The cake moved to the center, and someone asked who wanted a corner piece. No one asked if I wanted to blow out candles. There weren't any. I cut myself a thin slice and tried to swallow the frosting without tasting it. The sweetness sat like chalk. Every small detail sharpened the price sticker, the plastic forks that bent too easily, the way Dad's gaze flicked past me as if I were furniture that needed dusting. I told myself to breathe evenly, to be the smooth stone in a fast river. You learn things growing up as the child who doesn't make the highlight reel. You learn to spot the little shortcuts people take when the effort isn't for you. You learn how to carry embarrassment without dropping it. And if you're lucky, you also learn the difference between silence and surrender. I smiled. I nodded at a joke I wasn't in. I stacked plates when Mom gestured with her chin. Outwardly, the night settled back into small talk and clinking forks. Inwardly, something shifted into place, quiet and mechanical, like a lock turning. It wasn't that I hadn't noticed the patterns before Ivy's curated triumphs. Lucas's rehearsed competence, Dad's sermons packaged as guidance. Mom's soft diplomacy that always seemed to land on the side of the loudest voice. I'd noticed. I had just been cataloging, not concluding. Sitting there with a blank card cooling my palm, I understood that the evening wasn't a celebration gone stale. It was a message, and the message was simple. You are the lesson tonight. Fine. Lessons can be misread. They can be rewritten. I swallowed another bite of cake and let the taste remind me of what not to accept. I told my body to calm down my expression, to cooperate my thoughts, to keep their feet under the table. I had been working towards something no one in that room had bothered to ask about. It wasn't glamorous. It didn't look good in a slideshow. but it had weight, and it was mine. The laughter that rolled across the room didn't erase that. If anything, it hardened it. When the dishes were cleared and the living room reclaimed its blandness, I carried my gifts upstairs, a novelty mug, a used book, an empty card. I placed the card on my desk and pressed the fold flat with my thumb. A hinge, I thought. Not an insult, a hinge. What opens next is up to me. I keep my smile on like a bandage, thin and temporary, while the night shuffles forward as if nothing happened. The cake has been sliced. Paper plates bend under too sweet frosting. Conversation drifts to safer subjects. Sports gas prices, a neighbor's dog, until it circles back as it always does to the children Edward is proud of. Lucas stretches in his chair, so his sleeve pulls back. The metal on his wrist catches the light like a small lighthouse. Last month, Edward presented him with that watch after a mid-level promotion. For momentum, he'd said. Tonight, Lucas taps the face as if checking time were a performance. Funny, he muses to no one in particular how consistent effort pays off. His eyes sweep past me like a broom. Ivy lounges on the sofa, thumbs flying. I might break 10,000 this week, she announces, turning her phone so the grid of her life gleams. Rooftop smiles spun sugar clouds, the practiced tilt of a champagne flute. Rose claps lightly, the sound of soft rain. Edward doesn't clap. He nods with the gravity of a judge. That's initiative, he declares. Building something that scales. I don't correct him. I don't say that a following isn't a livelihood, and a watch isn't wisdom. I nod, breathe, stay quiet. Silence isn't surrender. It's a tool I haven't used properly until now. When the plates are crowded with crumbs and compliments are thin as napkins, Edward clears his throat and steeples his fingers. A summons. All right, he says, let's talk responsibility. The word sits in the center of the room like a poker chip. Lucas leans forward, interested. Ivy rolls her eyes, but she's listening. My back straightens without asking me. Caleb Edward begins saying my name like a formality on a document. You're still here under this roof rent-free. I choose a careful voice. For now, I'm juggling shifts, night classes. You know this. He waves away my context like steam. Explanations don't change outcomes. You're 27. Your siblings are contributing adults. Meanwhile, you consume what you don't replace: food, water, power. I feel heat rise, but keep my face neutral. I do what I can. I cover groceries when I can. Groceries. Ivy sings, not looking up. A bag of chips and frozen pizza doesn't count. Lucas smirks. If this were my place, you'd have been on a lease months ago. Edward sets a number on the table the way a dealer slaps down a card. 800, starting next month. That's fair. The air checks itself for exits. 800 for a childhood bedroom with a window that sticks. 800 while I shuttle between a campus that smells like highlighter and a job that smells like coffee grounds. 800 from a bank account that already does subtraction like a hobby. I swallow nod once because begging is its own kind of humiliation, and we're apparently doing those in bulk. Rose tries to slide a pillow under the blow. Pressure makes diamonds, she offers. Her voice apologizes even as the words don't. Ivy claps theatrically. Finally, I can expand into his room. Better light. She says it like a joke, but she inventories space with her eyes. I'll make it happen, I say, and the sentence tastes like metal. Later, when the living room empties and the dishwasher hums like a machine that understands duty better than I do, I go upstairs to the boxy brightness of my lamp and a blue bar at the bottom of my screen. I open my budgeting app and do math that refuses to become magic. Tuition gas, the kind of groceries that include vegetables. Even if I stack extra shifts, 800 is a cliff. I'm still awake when the front door clicks, and Edward's voice glides in from the hall, low and confident the way he speaks when he believes he's narrating other people's futures. I'm not eavesdropping on purpose. The house is old and the vent near my desk behaves like a funnel. We'll route it straight into the family account, he's saying. No more loose ends. Lucas's voice. That'll help. Tires weren't cheap. Ivy's laugh and flights aren't either. Destination weddings are practically charity work. Edward again soothing. We take care of our own. Your brother contributing will free up room for your goals. There's a quiet, compact moment where I don't feel anything. Then the feeling arrives all at once, loud as a dropped tray. The rent isn't a lesson. It's a pipeline. Money pulled from a son who makes the least and poured into lives that already received more. I picture an envelope blank folded once and understand it wasn't empty. It was a message I read too late. I sit back and the room feels tilted. My first instinct is theatrical. Pack a bag, slam a door, let the night hear the exit it deserves. But exits are expensive, and I'm not a fan of drama that ends in homelessness or dropped classes. Survival is not a sprint. It's a series of correctly placed steps. I pull my chair closer instead. In the days that follow, the house adjusts to my new assignment. Edward prints small reminders and tapes them to my door, red marker circling the amount due, like a teacher grading me for neatness. Accountability, one of them reads, underlined twice. He smiles as if he's performed a mercy. Ivy hums 800 when she walks down the hall. 3 notes that are more cadence than melody. She holds phone-light interviews with herself in the bathroom mirror, practicing thanks for gifts that haven't been paid for. Lucas counts backward from the first of the month whenever we cross paths in the kitchen, a countdown to an event I'm financing. Rose tries to neutralize the atmosphere with recipes and gentle counsel. If you modeled some of Lucas's drive, she tells me while butter shushes in a pan, things might open up. She doesn't see that I'm already prying at doors every night, fingertips sore on the hinges. There are moments still when laughter makes a nest out of my history. Stories pull down from high shelves the play, where I forgot my line and the air between us forgot me. The fair where my wallet found another pocket. Soda tipped into a car seat decades ago, as if upholstery could hold a grudge. Classic Caleb Lucas says, and they chuckle. I smile on cue. It costs less than a debate. I don't tell them that debt has a sound, and I hear it everywhere now. It's in the thinness of Edward's wallet when he snaps it shut too quickly. It's in the way Rose tears coupons with a purpose she mislabels as a hobby. It's in Lucas's new tires, which are quiet on the road, but loud on the statement. It's in Ivy's itinerary saved in drafts, a trip pinned to a card that has learned the word declined. I don't show them the spreadsheet I start building in the privacy of my window-stuck room. Columns that carry dates and minimums and fees that stack like lesser sins. I don't mention the folder on my desktop where I keep copies of things I was asked to organize because you're good with computers, Caleb, and which I organized too well. I am not interested in ambushes. I am interested in the truth lined up and labeled. What hurts most isn't the number. It's the choreography. The way my father arranges the living room like a stage. The way my brother angles his wrist. The way my sister frames her life. The way my mother calls humiliation a lesson. The way the family account has become a holy object that eats quietly. I had thought I was simply ignored. It turns out I was inventory. On a gray Saturday, Edward knocks on my door as if knocking were a kind of courtesy he invented. You understand the plan, he asks. He isn't asking. Direct deposit to the house. That way, it gets where it needs to go. To the house, I repeat, careful with nouns. He smiles, satisfied that I've learned the right vocabulary. We're all tightening up. You'll thank me one day. I thank him that day. It costs me nothing. It buys me time. At night, I press my palm against the cool wall beside my desk and feel the faint thump of the home's artery. We are a family of circulations, money praise, attention blame. I imagine a valve small and decisive. It's not difficult to picture where it should go. I am not powerless, I am patient. The decision takes up residence without a lease. I won't announce it. Announcements are fireworks, loud, bright, and quickly ash. I will wait. I will keep my head low when necessary and my eyes level when it counts. I will learn what I need to learn, gather what I need to gather, and keep my dignity in my pocket for once, not on the table where it can be split like cake. When I finally stand, it won't be to plead or perform. It will be to pivot. For now, I stack plates after dinner. I rinse, I dry, I set them in cabinets I could navigate blindfolded. I say goodnight and mean only half of it. Upstairs, I sit at the desk where life has been slowly moving from reaction to design. I open a blank document, then another, then a third. One for numbers I didn't sign up for. One for the words I will choose when it's time. One for the list I'm starting called it What I Owe Myself. I place the envelope from my birthday on top of them folded, once still blank. It's no longer an insult, it's an invitation. I pick up a pen. Not yet, I tell myself, but soon. Silence became my schedule. When the house finally stopped performing, when Edward's lectures were done for the day, when Ivy's ring light clicked off. When Lucas ran out of stories to practice success, I opened my laptop and clocked in to the only job that didn't judge me before I started. The first tasks weren't glamorous. A corner cafe wanted tighter copy for its online menu because customers kept calling to ask what seasonal meant. A dog groomer needed a one-page site that didn't break on phones. A thrift store hoped their ads would sound less like yard sale signs. I said yes, and learned on the fly between quote sent and invoice paid. I drafted headlines, tested taglines, trimmed paragraphs until they stood up straight. When I didn't know a term, I learned it before sunrise. The pay was small, but it was mine. I opened a savings account that only I knew about and fed it in quiet installments. Numbers crawled upward, first a week of expenses, then a month. I could almost hear the hum of future rent that didn't have an argument attached to it. Days stayed crowded, part-time shift. Night classes, buses that ran late. In the margins, I built a portfolio that didn't pretend to be bigger than it was. Side-by-side screenshots, simple charts, bounce rates down signups, up checkout steps reduced. When people asked what I did, I gave the same answer. Clearer words, simpler paths, faster pages. No fireworks, just function. Referrals started as a trickle. The cafe manager told a florist. The florist told a boutique owner. The boutique introduced me to a mechanic whose website frightened customers into calling for quotes. The mechanic passed me to a local event venue run by two people who believed a calendar was just a list. For the first time, someone asked if I could stay on month after month. I searched how to write a retainer, drafted a contract in English, and rewrote it in human. We signed the second version. Momentum rewired my mornings. The alarm moved backward into darkness. I liked it. I drafted before coffee finished dripping. I scheduled posts during lunch. I answered questions between classes standing under a hallway vent where the signal behaved. The rhythm should have felt like a squeeze. Instead, it felt like a corridor I'd chosen. Inside the house, the script didn't change. Lucas still angled his wrist so the watch caught light. Ivy still rehearsed delight into her front camera. Rose still softened edges with small kindnesses that never made it to policy. Edward still spoke in moral invoices. But below the surface, something gave. They leaned on me in the ways people don't call leaning. The printer blinked in a pattern that meant download a driver, and I made it purr again. Rose locked herself out of email. I set up a password manager while she stirred soup. Ivy sent captions with one-word polish and asked which tags would look effortless. Lucas forwarded a resume that read like someone running a race without a finish line and told me to make it punch. I kept a private ledger, not to gloat, just to measure load. Dependence is data. Then a client who wasn't a cousin of a client found me through search. He ran a logistics startup out of a space that still had lines on the floor from a former gym. He'd read my florist case study and wanted the same clarity for his lead funnel. We met at a table that had been a ping pong table. The net posts were still attached. He didn't want hype. He wanted a plan he could read twice and remember. I audited his site like I studied for exams. Tabs, notes, maps. I squeezed the jargon out of the hero copy, untangled forms that asked for blood type, and retired a carousel that hid the only useful sentence. Then I waited. The numbers moved, slowly at first, then like a river after rain. Call volume rose. Submissions started to look like intent rather than accidents. He asked if I could own the campaign. The word own felt like a key dropping into my hand. I said yes. To sign, I needed a business name. I wrote a list that ranged from clever to embarrassing, landed on something plain, and filed for an LLC. It felt like drawing a line between my life and my work. I requested an EIN, opened a business checking account, and sent an invoice with a logo that made me smile, then edit again. Money stabilized. I retired a nagging credit card with a phone call and a pair of scissors. I bought a used laptop that didn't wheeze after 4 tabs. I replaced a chair that had trained my back into a comma. When a bill arrived, I paid it before it asked twice. None of it was flashy. All of it was proof. At school, proof showed up in other people's handwriting. A professor who guarded praise wrote clear thinking in the margin of my draft. A classmate paid me unprompted to review her portfolio. In a hallway full of flyers for events no one attended, I realized I no longer needed to audition to be taken seriously. I had references, and not just the kind you list at the end of a resume. Meanwhile, the household kept practicing solvency. Edward bought brand name extras and left receipts on the counter like props. Rose clipped coupons with the concentration of a surgeon. Lucas's new tires were quiet on the road, but loud on the statement. Ivy kept a travel itinerary in drafts as if saving it made it paid. The performance was convincing until you turned down the volume and looked at the ledger. The ledger arrived in a thick envelope labeled taxes. "You're good with computers," Edward said, handing it to me like a prescription. "Sort this file online." He didn't ask, he delegated. I didn't snoop. The numbers were placed in my hands. I scanned statements named files, properly built folders by year and bank instead of Misty C. Patterns came forward the way they do when you finally look balances near their limits. Late fees standing shoulder to shoulder. A cash advance that matched the day Lucas's tires appeared. Airline holds that hugged Ivy's draft itinerary, an overdraft that survived because a deposit sprinted across the calendar at the last second. I made no speeches. I saved exact copies to an encrypted drive and returned the envelope with everything in order. I didn't intend to weaponize the truth. I intended to remember it. People misquote memory. PDFs don't. Seeing the debt didn't make me superior, it made me sober. Appearances are a costly habit. Accountability sounds like virtue until it's used to mean your money for our image. I put the documents away and updated my own list, the one that mattered. The list was not dramatic. 3 months of living expenses, then 4. A short list of rooms for rent within bus distance of work and school, with notes about noise at 2 a.m. A timeline for easing off the part-time shift once retainers covered what they used to cover. A reminder to back up important files twice and keep a hard copy of critical numbers in a plain folder no one else would open. The change I felt wasn't triumph. It was alignment like a door finally sitting right on its hinges. Part 1 of this year had taught me how humiliation can clarify. Part 2 taught me endurance is planning by another name. This part taught me the most useful lesson, yet leverage rarely announces itself. It accrues line by line, invoice by invoice, document by document. Around me, the house rehearsed Lucas, practicing certainty. Ivy practicing charm, Rose practicing hope, Edward practicing authority. I practiced leaving, not with fireworks, but with a sequence. The work I did for clients gave me a method measure, adjust, repeat. I applied it inward. I didn't become cruel, I became exact. When Ivy sent a caption at midnight with polish in the subject, I said I'd look if I had time. When Lucas requested a rewrite with urgent in all caps, I replied with a rate. When Edward's printer coughed, I fixed it and stopped pretending that fixing things obligated me to be furniture. Before I turned off the lamp one night, I looked at my account balances and felt a quiet lift enough runway to step outside if a storm blew through. I put the old birthday card blank folded once on top of my notebook. It no longer read as insult, it read as hinge. I was nearly ready to open the door. I'd been repeating one rule to myself for weeks. Patience is not passivity, it's choreography. If I moved too early, the story would snap back to the old script where I was the problem. So I let the house hum Edward with his morals, Rose with her soft fixes, Lucas with his staged competence, Ivy with her filters, and I waited for cues I knew would arrive. They did. 7 days before Ivy's big trip, she swept into my doorway with a phone and a deadline. My ticket won't confirm, she said, breath quick as a metronome. The app keeps glitching. Can you fix this? I took the phone. Network fine. App updated. Card details correct. Then the banner slid down like a curtain. Payment declined. There's no patch for an empty tank. It's not the app, I said, handing it back. The card isn't approving. Her expression cracked. Dad said it would go through. Then it's between him and the bank, I answered, steady polite. Only the cardholder can resolve a hold. She pivoted out in a storm of perfume. Minutes later, downstairs, air sharpened Ivy. Pressing Edward, insisting, Rose pleading for tone, Lucas advising like a sideline coach. I didn't need the vent to listen. I'd memorized this argument's contour entitlement, colliding with limit. One thread pulled. 2 nights later, Lucas cornered me with a laptop and instructions. Make this resume pop, he said, as if intensity could substitute for please. The doc was a collage of fonts and verbs that had nowhere to land. Send your final, I told him. He emailed a draft titled Polish. I opened it. The old reflex to rescue twitched. I put it down. I exported his file exactly as written and uploaded it to the portal he specified. No sabotage, no edits, just reality delivered. Silence answered him. Then irritation. Then a theory about unfair markets. The only thing that didn't show up was accountability. I stirred tea and let the echo fade. 2 threads pulled. Then Edward arrived with a thick envelope labeled taxes. Delegation is his favorite form of asking. Sort these file online, he said. You're good with computers. I was careful. Nothing I learned was stolen. It was placed in my hands. I scanned and named the PDFs, properly grouped statements by month and bank instead of MIEC, mirrored the folder in a secure archive. Patterns stepped forward the way they do when you finally look, revolving balances, skirting limits, late fees queued like cones. A cash advance tracing perfectly to the day Lucas got quiet. New tires, airline holds shadowing Ivy's draft itinerary. An overdraft surviving only because a deposit sprinted in just in time. I didn't flinch. I returned the envelope with everything orderly and kept exact copies. Not to weaponize yet, to remember. People argue with memory, files don't. 3 threads pulled. The house adjusted by degrees. Ivy avoided my eyes for a while, orbit uncertain. Lucas spoke louder, which is his way of covering doubt. Rose tried recipes that promised comfort in their titles. Edward leaned harder on words like standards and accountability, the way someone leans on a railing when stairs feel steeper. I kept working. Morning belonged to clients, night to checklists. I tightened my systems, renewed retainers without celebration, backed up everything twice. My LLC stopped feeling like a novelty and became a framework, lived inside it, and held its shape. People imagine revenge as a door slam. It looks good on a screen. It fails in a life. I preferred the cleaner method, let truth stand in good lighting. So when Ivy made a second run at the flight, they said try a different card. Can't you call them? I shook my head. Only the card holder, I repeated. They'll tell me the same thing. She left with indignation arranged like armor. The argument returned downstairs on schedule. Lucas sent a revised resume that was the old one shuffled. Upload, he wrote. I did. The portal did what portals do receive. He paced the kitchen for days, then declared the company had poor judgment. Possibly. Also possible the mirror was functioning. Edward brought a second stack forms that had gone out late. I sorted, filed, watched the same numbers tell the same story, only louder. Systems don't judge, but they do reveal. Was I cruel? No. I was exact. For years, they'd leaned on me while calling me unreliable printers, passwords captions, bureaucratic mazes. I didn't remove help. I removed the cushion. Everyone met the floor. Outside the house, my life kept widening. A campaign I ran for a logistics client cleared a clean conversion milestone. I sent 3 lines of notes and watched the next week improve again. A venue extended for another quarter. I paid a bill early because I could and saved the receipt because I should. Inside tension thickened until Edward called a family meeting his favorite theater. The agenda to formalize the rent by routing it directly into the family account via automatic deposit for order and transparency. I looked at the faces Ivy's worry masked as annoyance. Lucas's performance calibrated to confidence. Rose's hope hitching a ride with fear. Edward's authority stretched across numbers it couldn't cover and felt the hinge I'd been building seed into its plate. Before we set anything up, I said, I've been making some changes. I didn't elaborate. Announcements are fireworks, bright brief ash. Proof would arrive on time. That night, I printed a small checklist and slipped it into the notebook that held everything utility shares to settle a moving timeline aligned with contract renewals, a list titled What I'll Still Help With, and a shorter list titled What I Won't. Boundaries aren't speeches, they're schedules. Not yet. I told myself one last time, almost. The downbeat was close enough to hear. Edward called it a quick check-in, which in our house always meant a decision had already been made. We collected in the living room. By habit, Ivy, scrolling Lucas rehearsing confidence, Rose smoothing a cushion that didn't need smoothing. Edward stood with his hands clasped and said, From now on, Caleb's rent will be deposited directly into the family account. Cleaner, accountable. I set my laptop on this coffee table and opened a folder labeled Household Records. Before we automate anything, I said, keeping my tone neutral, we should be precise about what that account is. A pulse flickered in Edward's jaw. What are you doing? Answering the part of the question that got skipped. I turned the screen toward them. Inside the very PDFs Edward had handed me during tax season statements, notices, renamed so they could speak. I tapped through the summary. I'd compiled balances, flirting with limits, late fees in neat rows. A cash advance dated the week Lucas's tires appeared. Airline holds matching Ivy's itinerary, drafts and overdraft that survived thanks to a last-minute deposit. Rose's hand found her necklace. Ivy stopped scrolling. Lucas leaned forward, then back. Where did you get that? Edward asked, color rising. From you, I said. You asked me to organize it. I did. I also kept exact copies because memory is unreliable and paperwork isn't. Silence took the room. For years, that silence had belonged to him. It didn't anymore. I won't fund a leaking pool, I continued. You've been calling credit responsibility and disguising lifestyle as needs. The rent you're demanding from me isn't for the roof, It's for the image. I'm not subsidizing that. That isn't fair, Ivy said. It's arithmetic, I replied, sliding the summary forward. Fair hasn't been a guest here in a while. Edward reached for authority. You still live here. For 2 more weeks, I said. I opened a second folder business. Contracts, invoices paid on time, a steady revenue sheet. I registered an LLC. I have retainers. My savings cover several months. I've already placed a deposit on a room on the bus line to work and school. Rose's eyes filled relief and regret, braided together. Lucas's mouth settled into a shape that wasn't quite a smile. Ivy looked caught between outrage and recalculation. You're being dramatic, Edward tried. No, I said. I'm setting a boundary. You preached accountability while hiding debt. You handed me an empty card and called it a lesson. The lesson landed just not how you planned. I learned to build a life that stands without your permission. I closed the laptop. The click sounded like a period. I'll settle my final share of utilities before I go, I said. My number won't change. If you need help with a document or a password, ask respectfully, and I'll see if I have time. After I leave, I answer for me. You answer for you. No one moved. The room felt unfamiliar, as if the furniture had shifted an inch while we watched. Rose spoke first, soft. You could have told us. I tried, I said. It got laughed off, so I built it instead. Edward opened his mouth, then closed it. The argument he wanted wasn't available. I gathered my wallet keys and the novelty mug from a different version of this house. At the doorway, I paused, not for drama, just to mark time. You wanted to teach me responsibility, I said. Consider it learned. Now you get to practice it. The door didn't slam. It closed the way good plans do, quietly on schedule. Thank you so much for listening to today's story. If this story resonated with you or made you reflect, I'd love to hear your thoughts, so feel free to share them in the comments below. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you won't miss the next story. I'll see you next time as we continue exploring more journeys and lessons together.